Chapter 4. Ruby tucked the pink note in her overalls pocket and ran for home, and she banged through the back door. As she banged through the back door, she smelled the summer's first stewed tomatoes bubbling on the stove. A pile of zucchini spilled across the countertop, along with her mother's notes from the garden. At the top of page 1, she had written neatly, "Adventures in Zucchini." Ruby washed her face and hands and came to the table, damp. "It's you," said Ruby's mother. "Glad to see you're still alive. Nice hat." She put a basket of hot biscuits on the table and sat down. "I almost went looking for you." Ruby flopped herself into a chair. "I came home the long way." She put her wreath hat in the middle of the table as a centerpiece. "The long way again. No wonder you're so out of breath. What was the life or death situation?" Ruby leaned across the table, gloating. "Ivy has laid 3 eggs. "You don't say." "I do say." She helped herself to the biscuits, then the creamed corn and fried okra and a slice of sweet potato pie. "We thought these hens were way too old for laying, but it turns out Ivy had other plans. I can't wait to meet her chicks." "You don't think there will be chicks?" Ruby's mother poured sweet iced tea into 2 tall glasses. "Sure there will be chicks. Don't you remember Herman, the Butterfield's rooster? For the past 2 days we've been shooing him out of the chicken yard until the Butterfields fixed their gate, and we got a gate. Now old Herman's going to be a daddy." Ruby buttered biscuits, 2 for her mother, 3 for her. Her mother put her elbows on the table and rested her chin in her hands. "Life does go on." "That's what I heard you tell Miss Eula after church last week." "That's what she taught me. I was just reminding her. This year has been hard for her." Ruby's heart skipped a beat and she spoke quickly. "But it's been a whole year." She shoved a biscuit at her mother. "Miss Eula is fine now, just fine." Ruby took a big bite of biscuit. "Some losses leave great big holes, Ruby. It's hard to lose someone you love so deeply, especially when you've known them as long as Miss Eula knew your grandpa." Ruby talked with her mouth full and changed the subject. "I had a hard time today, too." Crumbs sprinkled her overalls and butter slid down her chin. "Do tell." Ruby held up a freckled finger and finished chewing, then swallowed. "At Miss Maddie's store, Melba Jane started picking on me, making fun, acting like a chicken. Then she called me a chicken." "Goodness, then what happened?" Ruby took a sloshy gulp of iced tea and wiped her whole face with her napkin. "I lit out after her." "Ruby!" "But I didn't tackle her. She got away." Ruby's mother opened her mouth to say something, then shut it. Instead, she reached over and captured Ruby's chin gently in the cupped palm of her hand. "What am I going to do with you?" Ruby tried to grin. "You're going to love me." "That I do." Her mother sat back and picked up her iced tea. My tongue is not warmed up yet this morning. She swirled it around to cool it, and the ice cubes tinkled against the glass. The mantel clock kept time in the living room, a solid tick-tock, tock-tock, and for a moment time stretched out and away. Ruby thought about how she and her grandpa used to wind the clock together every week, and the words came out before she could stop them. "I miss Grandpa Garnet." "Me too, sweetie. I expect I'm always going to miss my daddy. He loved us to pieces, didn't he?" Ruby gave herself over to memory. "He always let me have the first scoop of ice cream when we made it ourselves. He taught me to whistle and how to play poker. Miss Eula says she played strip poker with Grandpa Garnet." "Ruby!" "Well, she did." Ruby's mother laughed. "I'm quite sure she did." Ruby sighed. "He would have loved Ivy, Bemmy, and Bess. I expect he would have. It's good to see his greenhouse being used this summer." Good garden of peas! I forgot. I've got to go. Ruby almost fell out of her chair. Miss Eula and I are going to visit the chickens tonight and see Ivy's eggs. And Miss Eula has big news for me. Ruby's mother stood up. Well, take her a plate. She loves my sweet potato pie, and goodness knows she won't cook for herself. She followed Ruby to the sink, where she kissed the top of her daughter's head. Be back before the crow calls, and no more raids on any egg ranches. The pink palace glowed in the early evening sunset. Big old hydrangeas, snowball bushes, Ruby called them, bloomed the length of the front porch. Grandpa Garnet had planted them before Ruby was born. He was the gardener in the family. That's where your mama gets her green thumb, Miss Eula had told Ruby. It's no wonder she's so smart about flowers and vegetables and bugs and such. She was digging in the dirt in the dark before she could talk. Ruby remembered doing the same thing with her grandfather. He had told her that corn was the tallest when you planted it under a new moon. He taught her to soak her moonflower seeds before she planted them. Every year they planted zinnias and marigolds and bachelor buttons and geraniums together, but no one had planted them this year. Still, there were flowers that returned year after year, and here they were, blooming their heads off in the front yard, the side, the back, all over. Flower beds full of hollyhocks and bee balm and lemon verbena and peppermint and black-eyed Susans, her grandpa's favorite. Ruby picked one now and stuck the flower stem behind her ear. The golden petals tickled her face. Ruby and Miss Eula had painted the house shell-shocked pink late last summer, after Grandpa Garnet died. Miss Eula had said it was a rite of passage. Rite of passage. It made Ruby think about traveling through secret tunnels and passageways and having her ticket punched at different checkpoints. She had the feeling, painting the house, that they were doing just that. One day they had splattered themselves silly, laughing and crying and telling stories about themselves and Grandpa Garnet. If he had been there, he would have directed the painting. A little more here. You missed a spot there. He would have made tomato sandwiches for them at lunch. He would have taken pictures. But he wasn't there, so they did it themselves with no audience but the nosy neighbors, who drove by the house slowly or peeked out from behind their Venetian blinds. Miss Eula had waved a messy paintbrush at all of them. Ruby blinked herself out of her memories. She stood and hiked up her left overall strap. She and Miss Eula had a ritual they followed each evening. Ruby faced the pink palace, put her hands on her hips, leaned her head backward into the early summer evening, and called, "Oh, Miss Eula, can you come out and play?" And Miss Eula did. Chapter 5. Let's get this straight. Ruby leaned over Miss Eula's kitchen table, an old issue of Poultry Today spread in front of her. 21 days from egg to chick. That means we should have some babies before July. Let's see. Laid today means chicks on, Miss Eula counted on her fingers, June 27th, or maybe 26th, depending on what time these eggs were laid. Either way, that's a lucky day. The kitchen smelled like peanut butter, and the table was littered with peanut shells. 2 empty bottles of orange crush and a mason jar full of black-eyed Susans sat among the shells. The attic fan droned and shoved the hot air around the room. Miss Eula wore one of the muumuus her son, Johnson, had sent her over the years. It had purple flowers on it. Ruby sat back in her chair and smiled. Ivy looks as shiny as a new penny. Yes, indeed, agreed Miss Eula. And don't you love how jealous Bemmy is? All full of clucks and squawks and let me see, let me see. Now can you tell me your big surprise, the one you told me about in your note? I can. Ruby, let's take a walk to the back meadow. That's a good place for my surprise. I'll bring the quilt and the softball. You bring the gloves. There's still enough light to have a catch. Yes, ma'am. Ruby grabbed the floppy hats by the back door, plopped one on her head, and gave the other to Miss Eula. I love big news. I can't wait to hear about what we're going to do next." The back meadows shimmered with sound. Ruby and Miss Eula walked through the flowering meadow grass, holding hands in the last wash of daylight, listening to the zizz of life around them. The moon was beginning to rise, a crescent moon, the color of old teeth. "Here we are," said Miss Eula. "So nice of this willow tree to keep our spot for us." They spread out their quilt under the willow in the warm purple light. "I do love this quilt," said Miss Eula. "It holds good memories, doesn't it?" Ruby straightened a corner. "Yes, ma'am, it does." The quilt was sewn in a pattern of stars made from pieces of old clothing, Ruby's old overalls, her baby blanket, her red shorts, her button blouses. Miss Eula's wild aprons were in there, as well as 2 everyday dresses and some striped dish towels. Grandpa Garnet had donated his favorite flannel shirt for the corner stars. Between the stars was a path of pink, made from an old set of sheets. Ruby and Miss Eula had sewn every stitch themselves. It was a masterpiece. Ruby put the ball and gloves by the tree trunk. She sighed and let go of the hard day as she flopped herself onto the quilt. A breeze began a little puff-puff around them as Miss Eula slipped off her shoes and sat beside Ruby. Her muumuu spread out around her, making her look like the center of a giant flower. A firefly winked on, and Miss Eula reached out her knobby hand to catch it. "Look, Miss Ruby, what I've got." The first firefly. Miss Eula gave it to Ruby, and she held it between her cupped palms. "Oh, little one, bright one," she recited the rhyme her grandfather had taught her. "You are the first one, so you are the light. You are the one we follow tonight. Fly away now to your free life so sweet. We'll follow you with our true hearts till we meet, on the side of the shore, in the meadow so fair, in the place where our souls soar into the air." Ruby parted her palms and lifted them upward. The firefly winked once and flew into the darkening sky, winked again and was gone. "I believe that is the first firefly tonight." Miss Eula's voice was sifty and far away. "What's the matter, Miss Eula?" "Oh, sugar, I've been thinking tonight about you, me, your grandpa, your mama, about Johnson and Annette. Oh, about life and how it does go on. Mama says you taught her that. I heard her say it to you, too, last Sunday after church. Well, your mama needed to hear that a long time ago when she found out she'd be raising you all by herself. And she did go on. We all did. Now it's my time to go on, and I will." "What does that mean? Are you going somewhere?" Ruby felt a tingle across her shoulders. "I am, sugar." Miss Eula's voice caught in her throat. "I am." Ruby blinked. "Where? Where are you going?" "I'm taking a trip, Ruby, honey. I'm going to go visit Johnson and Annette in Hawaii." "Hawaii?" Ruby held her breath. "When? Why?" "The day after tomorrow." Miss Eula's voice picked up its old sturdiness. "Remember the letter I waved at you at Miss Mattie's store? There's good news in Hawaii, Ruby. Johnson and Annette had a baby. They kept it a secret, and now they are telling everyone, and I'm invited to come to Hawaii and be with them. I'm going to take me a trip. They sent a ticket with the letter." Ruby felt the earth open up to swallow her. "Wait!" She scrambled to her feet. "Ruby, it's all right. Listen to me. No, you can't be leaving. I'm not leaving forever, Ruby." Ruby felt lightheaded. "When does the ticket say you come back?" "It's a round-trip ticket to Hawaii with an open return. That means I can pick the date I come back." "It means you don't have to come back at all." Ruby turned her back to Miss Eula and kicked her catcher's mitt. The inside of her nose got that stinging feeling it got whenever she was about to cry. "I don't want you to leave. You can't. If you leave me alone with Miss Mattie and that awful Melba Jane." Ruby held back her tears, but her shoulders shook. Miss Eula got to her feet and tried to put her arms around Ruby, but Ruby took 2 steps away. A willow branch brushed her face, and she shoved it aside. "Please don't go. I need you to stay here with me." I'm leaving because I need to, Ruby. I need to do what's right for me and for you. I want to see how life does go on, and then I want to come back to you and your mama and my home." Ruby sniffed back tears and wiped at her eyes. "You'll get over there and forget all about this place. You won't remember me. You've got a new grandbaby now. I can't believe you haven't told Mama about this yet." "I wanted to tell you first, sugar. I just read Johnson's letter this afternoon, and the news was as much a surprise to me as it is to you. I had no idea." "How can Uncle Johnson send you a ticket now when he couldn't come last summer for, well, you know." Ruby stopped. "Johnson just sold his first paintings, Ruby, so he has enough extra money to either fly here by himself or let me fly there to see him and Annette and the new baby. You know it pained him no end that he couldn't get here for Garnet's funeral last summer. Pained me too." Ruby sank down into her quilt. "What's this new grandbaby's name?" "She doesn't have one yet. But her name won't be Ruby, and she won't be you, and she will never, never take your place. You'll love her anyway." Miss Eula laughed and sat down next to Ruby. "Of course I will. I do. But I love you too, and what's more, I'm depending on you. Who else is going to look after Ivy, Bemmy, and Bess for me? Who's going to take care of the new chicks? Who's going to gather my mail and keep the Pink Palace in shape? No one can do it like you can." "I can't do all that by myself." "Sure you can. You'll have your mama here to help you, and you have your friends. Mama's busy. This is her busy season, and everybody I like lives too far out of town. And you'll write to me and tell me how Ivy is doing, and I'll write to you and tell you how Hawaii is, and we'll just keep right on doing what we've always done." "What's going to keep me from tackling Melba Jane and scratching her eyes out?" Miss Eula smiled. "You'll do a fine job of that all by yourself. You always know what to say about her to make me feel better. I'll keep saying it, Ruby, honey, and you'll keep remembering it. It will be fine." Ruby lay on her side and curled her body into a ball. She buried her face in the sweet smell of her quilt. "When will you be back?" "I'll be back when I've had time to soak up Johnson and Annette and the baby. When I've talked and talked about your grandpa. When I've lived away from reminders of Garnet for a while. When I've made some new memories. When you've lived away from me for a while." Ruby unrolled herself and looked through the branches of the willow. The moon's light sprinkled over Miss Eula and Ruby, sparkling them like diamonds. It was going to be a beautiful night. Miss Eula lay next to Ruby. She took Ruby's hand, and they lay on their quilt next to each other, breathing together, being together. "I'm taking you with me, Ruby girl. I'm taking you in my dreams. And you'll come to me in your letters. You will write me, won't you? I think you're a pretty good writer for a 9-year-old. Ruby's voice was full of cracks. "And you're a pretty good scribbler yourself for a grandmother." Miss Eula squeezed Ruby's hand. "Oh, Miss Ruby Lavender, you do pull at my heart. Look up at this starry sky. We are like those shining stars, Ruby. We will be under this same sky no matter where we are. You remember that." Ruby squeezed back. Warm tears slipped sideways down her cheeks and into her ears. She held Miss Eula's hand and thought about the lonely, empty summer ahead. Chapter 6, June 8th. "For pity's sake," Miss Mattie was exasperated. "You'd think we were selling tickets to see snow in July." Miss Mattie's store was also the Greyhound bus depot in Hallelujah. Each morning at 6:45, the bus stopped in front of the store on the way to Jackson. It came back through the opposite direction every evening at 8. Most days the town was still shut up tight when the bus rolled in, but not today. Miss Mattie had opened the store just to keep people from spilling into the highway and getting run over flat. Ruby was behind the nail kegs inside Miss Mattie's store, sitting on a paint bucket. It was a good spot from which to hear and see all the action. She peered between the 8-penny and 6-penny nails. There was Melba Jane with her mother and her 5 brothers and sisters. They swarmed around the Greyhound sign that hung from the light pole out front. The little ones were tugging and hitting each other, arguing about something. Melba Jane left them and scooted inside Miss Mattie's store to tappity-tap-tap, giggling with Lorna Mullins, another tappity girl and a 6th grader. Ruby watched Lorna take 2 pretzels from the Cracker Barrel and give one to Melba Jane. Melba removed a glove and took it with a conspiratorial smile. Phoebe Scoop Tolbert stood outside with Miss Mattie. Miss Phoebe always smelled like violets, powdered up one side and down the other with talcum. She wrote a column for the Aurora County News called Happenings in Hallelujah. Miss Mattie sounded peeved. "I don't know why you want to report it in the paper, Phoebe. The whole town is here to witness it." Miss Phoebe lifted her head and sniffed. "We owe it to our elderly readers, those who cannot be with us today." Miss Mattie harumphed. "The only bodies who are not here today are in the cemetery." Miss Eula drove her big car slowly up Main Street. "Mattie!" She waved out the window and pulled the car into the space reserved for the bus. Ruby's mother leaned across Miss Eula and called to Miss Mattie. "Have you seen Ruby? We can't find her anywhere." "Not yet. Move the car, Eula, unless you want it run over." Ruby's mother opened the trunk and took out her mother's bags. "Come on, Mama. I know Ruby is here somewhere. I'll park this thing for you. You come say goodbye to your public." Miss Eula eased out of the car and looped her big white purse over her arm. She wore a beige dress with buttons up the front, a belt at the waist, stockings and white shoes, and a round beige hat. And gloves. Lipstick. Ruby stared at her. You'd think she was going to church. Folks crowded Miss Eula, full of good trip messages, comeback messages. "Give Johnson our best. Squeeze that baby for us. Send us a picture postcard messages." "Bus!" yelled 2 small boys standing in the road. Their mothers ran to catch them and bring them back to the sidewalk. Ruby's mother appeared, back from parking the car. "I don't see her." Miss Eula peered overhead. "She told me she would never say goodbye. I guess she meant it." The big Greyhound slowed and coughed and wheezed onto the shoulder of Main Street in front of Miss Mattie's store, spewing a trail of black exhaust. The driver opened the door and looked puzzled. "What have we here, a convention? How many of you folks for Jackson?" Miss Eula stepped forward. "Just me." "She's going to the airport," said a small voice, one of the boys who had been in the road. "She's riding on an airplane. She's going to Hawaii." The driver smiled wide. "My stars! Then it's a party." He shoved his hat back on his head and opened the doors on the underside of the Greyhound. He picked up Miss Eula's bags and began storing them in the belly of the bus. The early morning sunshine was sharp and clean and sparkled on the bus windows. Miss Eula turned. "I know you all will miss me." Laughter rolled around the crowd. "I will miss you, that's for certain. Mostly I will miss your many kindnesses to me this past year." People fell silent. "Harvey Popham, everyone should have a neighbor as thoughtful as you are. I thank you for your advice and your butter beans. Agnes Fellows, I thank you for your pop-in visits and for riding with me to the Eastern Star meetings. Begonia Jacobs, I have you to thank for keeping me informed about what everybody else thought I should be doing this last year." Mrs. Jacobs threw her hands out at Miss Eula and laughed. Miss Eula spotted Melba's mother. "Layla," the crowd hushed, "take care of yourself. I will miss you." Miss Eula blew her a kiss. Melba's mother caught it in her hand, placed it on her cheek, and smiled. Melba wheeled and walked stiffly up the street, where she sat on the curb and pulled her dress over her knees. Miss Mattie cleared her throat. "Mattie," Miss Eula's voice was warm and full of love, "I know I leave you short-handed in the store, but I have no doubt you will decide how to handle that. You're going to go whether I say so or not, so go. Tell my nephew hello. And remember, you're a grandmother. Don't go climbing any coconut trees." The bus driver took off his hat and looked apologetic. "We got to get going, ma'am. Got a schedule to keep." Ruby's mother gave Miss Eula a last hug. "Be well. I love you." Miss Eula squeezed her back, then touched Miss Maddie's arm. "I know you love me, too." Miss Maddie harumphed and barked to the bus driver. "She's ready. Go, go." Ruby watched Miss Eula board the bus. She thought about running to her for one last hug, a hug that smelled like shimmering meadows and parched peanuts and chicken feathers and pink paint and oldest memories. But she didn't. She stayed right where she was. She would not say goodbye. People waved from the sidewalk. "Goodbye, goodbye." The engine thrummed like an airplane, and the bus pulled slowly onto Main Street. Ruby stood up to get a last look at Miss Eula sitting by the bus window, waving. She saw Melba Jane's mother sit on the curb next to Melba and put her arm around her shoulders and lean toward her daughter. Their heads touched gently. "Ruby Lavender," Miss Maddie stood in the door of the Mercantile. "Hiding. You were hiding out in my store." "Well, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I wasn't hiding exactly." "Well, what were you doing?" I was not saying goodbye." Miss Maddie gave Ruby a long look. "Child, come here." Ruby climbed over the nail barrels and stood in front of Miss Maddie. Miss Maddie bent over to look Ruby in the eye. She put her face directly in front of Ruby's, and Ruby could see every wrinkle on it. It reminded her of her catcher's glove, all worn and creased. "You know, I didn't get the chance to say goodbye to your grandfather before he died, and I've always regretted it. He was my brother, after all. You should say goodbye whenever you can. You just never know." "She's not going to die, Miss Maddie. She said she's coming back." "Of course she's coming back, child. I didn't mean she wouldn't." Miss Maddie studied Ruby for a moment. "Just look at this ponytail. Turn around. I'll fix it for you." "I like it this way, Miss Maddie." Ruby's red hair pinwheeled out in 7 different directions. It was tangled. Miss Maddie harumphed. "Go home and find your mother, then. She's worried about you." "Yes, ma'am." Ruby scrambled out the back door of the Mercantile and into the sun. It was going to be another sticky, hot day. Ruby never wanted to be in the Mercantile again without Miss Eula. What would it be like to walk home and pass an empty mailbox? An empty pink palace? Maybe she could sit in Miss Eula's house and wait there, alone, until she returned. Aurora County News, Twilight Edition, June 8th. Happenings in Hallelujah, by Phoebe Scoop Talbert. Pastor Leroy Merson visited the Hallelujah sick and shut-ins this past Wednesday. On Thursday, he enjoyed a dinner of roast beef and potatoes at the home of Miss Phoebe Talbert. According to Mrs. Evelyn Lavender, County Extension Agent for Home and Garden Affairs, peppers should be ready for picking next week. After a spirited discussion at the town council meeting, during which several members threatened to resign, as usual, the title of this year's town operetta will be "How Dear to My Heart Are the Scenes of My Childhood." Local citizen Miss Eula Dapplevine has departed our fair town for an extended trip to Hawaii to see her son Johnson and his wife and new baby. According to Miss Maddie Perkins, my life will be more hectic in the store without her help, but on the other hand, this town could use a breather. Miss Ruby Lavender was standing with Miss Maddie and was heard to say, "Woe is me." June 8th. Dear Miss Eula, well, you are gone. I hope you were happy. I am not. For your information, Melba Jane is still here. I am working on a disappearing potion to make her vanish. Mama is in the kitchen cooking, cooking, cooking. She is still writing about zucchini, so I know what we are having for dinner. Mama says giving you 23 pictures of me was 22 pictures too many. I don't think so. Here is one more for you. And here is a zucchini blossom. I am reading up on new babies, and I have some free advice. Do not hug that grandbaby too much. It isn't good for her. I hope they name her Hortense. That's a great name, don't you think? Woe is me, your almost only darn granddaughter, Ruby L. P.S. What did you eat on the plane? Not zucchini, I bet. I guess I will go to the Pink Palace and check on the chickens. June 8th. Dear Miss Eula, time for lunch. You are still gone. I am lonely. For your information, we are having peanut butter and zucchini sandwiches. Sticky and crunchy at the same time. A taste treat, says Mama. I am not so sure. My disappearing potion didn't work. I'll think of something else. Here is another picture for you to remember me by. More free advice. Always jiggle babies after they eat. Woe from your most important grandchild, Ruby L. P.S. Ivy, Bemmy, and Bess were dust bathing all morning. I changed their water and fed them more corn. They are so noisy. Mama says try reading to them. She says reading is calming. June 9th. Dear Miss Eula, Mama says I am going to use up a tree writing to you if I keep this up. If you come home now, it will save a tree. For your information, I read the chickens some A words in my dictionary, not the definitions. It took me most of the afternoon. They asked me to spend the night, but I came on home. I tucked them in first. Ivy loves sitting on her eggs. I was worried about her being so high up in that old bushel basket full of straw, but she likes it there. Whenever Ivy gets off her nest to eat, Bemmy jumps on. Then Ivy starts squawking. Bess ignores everything and just eats. It's loud. I had to shout while I read from accordion to adventure. What is your opinion on itching powder for Melba Jane? More free advice. It is never too late to change your mind. Woe and love, your wasting away granddaughter, Ruby L. P.S. I am not wasting away for real, but you never know. That's it for today. Until next time.